and welcome to Malden Pride, almost in the park, actually at the Senior Center 2023. My name is Leilani. Sign that for folks. And for folks with visual impairment or who are watching the live stream, I am a short woman with white skin, long brown hair, and a pastel pink dress, as well as very angular, very bright red glasses. Before we officially kick off, I just want to take a moment to orient folks. You are in the speakers program. This is also where we will have DJing from Harlow and performances. If you head directly across the hallway, we have tabling. These are queer-owned businesses, queer makers, ally businesses, community organizations, and political groups. We encourage you to visit every table. In the very back, from where you first came in, there is a library. That is going to be the site of our queer-to-queer education space. Topics include, what is a neopronoun and how do I use it? Tips and tricks for gender-affirming makeup across the gender spectrum, and a brief history of queer labor organizing, because we've always been here, we've always been queer, and we've always made good trouble. Now, I was raised to never start a gathering without first doing two things: find my hosts and acknowledge and thank them, and pay respects to my elders. As a non-Native person on Native land, despite being an organizer of today's event, I can never truly claim the status of host. And so, I begin with a recognition of the waters, lands, and peoples indigenous to this place we now call Malden on behalf of my comrades in the Malden Pride Coalition. There is no Malden without our waterways, including the Malden River and the Great Tidal River, or the Missatuck in Pequot, Algonquin, which is the correct pronunciation of what we now call the Mystic River. We celebrate the beauty and the power of the land we gather on: the esker in Pine Bank Park, carved by glaciers, the summit of Waits Mount, the oak and cedars many times our seniors. We recognize that all of this is the traditional and ancestral home of the Cowasack Band of the Pennacook Abenaki, the Wampanoag, and the Namkeg, also known as the Pawtucket, as well as the Massachusetts, whose name the Commonwealth continues to appropriate today. We offer our respects to their ancestors, past, present, and future, because there is no future without Indigenous future. There is no future without Black future. There is no future without disabled future. There is no future for any of us without a future for all of us on this land or any other. We respect their perpetual claim to the land and the perpetual claim of the land to the people, despite the bloody legacy and ongoing trauma of colonialism. When I speak of the ongoing trauma of colonialism in Pride Month, I do not speak in the abstract. As our Two-Spirit, Indigiqueer, and LGBTQIA+ Native siblings have constantly reminded us, neither homophobia nor the modern gender binary are native to this land. However, this does not stop homophobia and transphobia, cultural and legislative, from most disproportionately impacting our Native queer siblings, especially queer women and Two-Spirit people of all ages. As we celebrate, we acknowledge there are historic wrongs to correct and vital work, not just to do, but that must be done together. As the specters of homophobic and transphobic legislation and rising bigotry loom, Malden Pride Coalition commits to centering our most vulnerable community members in all our organizing. It is why we thank you for masking during this first hour so that our most vulnerable members can gather with us. It is why we committed to hiring and paying drag artists throughout our month of Pride programming. It is why the speakers program is full of trans and genderqueer voices from across our community, and why our queer-to-queer education topics include so many issues and causes dear to the trans community here in Malden. We recognize that there is a concerted effort to draw LGBTQIA Two-Spirit plus folks out of public life, and that a key tactic to achieving that aim is targeting queer folks who sit at the unique intersection of most visible and most marginalized. This tactic find the most vulnerable, and the demand, disappear from public life, then disappear back into the closet, then simply disappear, are not new. Neither is our answer. Our answer is the same answer given at Stonewall when the demand was disappear in underground clubs and then beneath billy clubs. It is the same answer given by ACT UP when the demand was disappear in silence swallowed by a pandemic and our prejudice. It is the same answer lesbians gave to the AIDS crisis when the demand was leave gay men to disappear, as though complicity in genocide will protect you from it. Our answer is their answer. We refuse. We refuse to turn our backs on our most vulnerable. We refuse to be divided from each other. We refuse to be divided from you. We refuse to disappear. We choose solidarity. We choose allyship. We choose liberation. We choose fear. And far beyond June, we choose pride. To the queer and trans elders gathered here today, I offer my personal refusal and resistance, as well as the gratitude of our collective, and a deep welcome. I have faith our community will navigate through the rough and ever-rising seas of bigotry because you have been the beacon showing us the way. The joyful rebellion of your existence in this moment and all moments to come light our path. We love you. To the queer families gathered with us today, in all the infinite and wondrous variations that queerness affords us, you are precious. You deserve to be together in safety and in love. We love you. To the queer youth gathered, I offer you my pledge to keep fighting for you and the world you deserve for as long as I am here. I can only speak my pledge, but I know that it is one that is lit in the hearts of many in this room, this building, this community, this commonwealth, this nation, and this world. And we are committed to making each of those circles safer and truer for you today and tomorrow. We love you. To the allies gathered here today, thank you. Solidarity and love forever. To the queer and trans ancestors, most especially those made ancestors before you had the chance to become elders, we remember you. To the speakers and performers, thank you. The floor is yours. Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. This is why we do everything in coalition, because I forgot to point out, we have interpreters. We have American Sign Language, Spanish, and Chinese translation available. If you need interpretation or assistance, please come to the back. There are folks waving eagerly and excitedly. They are in the front room. We have interpretation available to you. My apologies and my thanks, and Spencer is going to introduce speakers, and I'm gonna go away.
Hi everyone, welcome. So nice to see everyone. I'm Spencer, I'm a local small business owner, Mystic Valley Salon. I have the pleasure of working with the board today and helping organize the speakers program. So today, I would love to welcome Harlow Havoc. Harlow is a Boston-based drag queen, DJ, and show host known for producing some of the city's most beloved queer nightlife events. Having started drag early in 2018 as a passion for queer performance art, Harlow has welcomed many accolades and titles in her time, such as Machine's 2019 All-Star Monday competition winner, R.I.P. Machine. Let's see, Miss Bragging Rights 2020, and most recently, Miss Gay Boston 2022. Harlow has helped raise thousands of dollars to local national charities, mainly benefiting queer and trans youth, and she plans to continue her platform to spread her love of queer networking and community building through her love of music and performance. Without further ado, Harlow Havoc.
Can y'all hear me good? Ooh. I have my boy voice on, excuse me. Hey everyone, how's everyone doing? No, all right. How is everyone feeling? We're feeling good? Love it. Are we feeling proud? Yes, I have to say, I always say this, Pride Month to drag queens is like Disneyland, except we're the ride. So I'm a little exhausted. I've had back-to-back gigs all month, almost, I'd say 4 or 5 times a week at this point. I'm getting into drag and working, but you think back even 10 years ago, something like that, and the career path that I've chosen was not even remotely possible. Drag has been around for centuries. The art form of genderqueer transformation has been around for truly centuries. So when you look at certain news articles from certain right-wing media outlets that claim that they are trying to attack the art form of drag and trying to keep that away from kids, that we're indoctrinating kids, please understand that this has been around for centuries. It is not going anywhere, and we are truly just trying to read to kids. As the son, my pronouns out of drag are he, him, and my pronouns in drag are she, her. As the son of a 3rd grade teacher, and as the grandson of also a 3rd grade teacher, my Nana, who passed recently, I truly believe that education is so important, and being able to read to children and show them that you can show up as your most glamorous and beautiful self is such a gift that the fact that anyone would try to attack that is just honestly disgusting to me. So if I can ask anything of the allies and the other queer people in the room is support your local drag, support local queer arts and artists, share their posts on social media, network with them, make them feel just as comfortable as we make you feel comfortable in other queer spaces. I will say I was very big into student council back in my day, so I loved writing speeches, but every time I tried to sit down to write something for this, I was kind of at a loss for words, to be quite honest. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here, so thank you so much, Spencer, for inviting me. We can applaud that, yes. Don't be awkward about it, don't be weird. So I just wrote down a few questions, and I figured we could answer them together. So the first question that I had is, what is drag? So does anyone actually have an answer for me? What is drag? I have my answer, clearly, but does anyone have a better answer? If anyone wants to.
Dressed as a girl.
There we go. Okay. All right. Yeah. So truly, drag is theatrical. In a lot of ways, it's very performative, and a lot of people would consider what I do to be like putting on a character, and in a lot of ways, that is true. And then in a lot of ways, it is not the full scope of what I believe that drag is. What I believe drag is, there's actually a prime example of what drag is. It is gonna be my good friend sitting right up front. Their name is Will Melu. They are also one of my drag daughters. So please make some noise for Bossy. I'm not calling her Bossy, that is actually her name. It's Bossy with an I, get it right, get it right. Well, she is a little bossy, but anyway, that's beside the point. Drag to me is about family. It is about chosen, queer, community, and family building in that way. So, Bossy, thank you so much for being here. I love you. You are the reason I keep doing what I do. I have plenty of other drag kids that are running around the city wreaking havoc, branding, trademark. If you didn't catch that was my last name. Everyone can laugh. But the reason I do what I do is to not only make my community proud, but to inspire others to truly and authentically be themselves. And that doesn't mean that they have to also do drag, right? Some of my kids, I should say, I still consider them my drag children and my drag babies, but they don't even do drag anymore, right? Maybe I put them in drag 1 or 2 times. I saw them go out for the night and they had the best night of their lives. And that, to me, is the ultimate form of queer bonding. It's that shared safety net that we had with each other in that moment. So please, please, please understand that drag is community and drag is family. When it comes to my journey with drag, beside the accolades, the crowns, the glitz, the glam, and all the rhinestones that are on this costume, that took me a very long time to do. My journey with drag, I started going into queer spaces when I was 18 years old. I grew up around the Lowell area. Anyone Lowell? Hey, yes. yes, queen work. Okay. We're not doing that. I'm not that girl. But I was heading all the way from Lowell, an hour and a half down to Providence, Rhode Island, for about 2 years every Thursday night, just to perform in an open stage show where they would not pay me. I would be lucky to walk out with about $20 in tips, and most of that was going to my drinks while I was there, and also to Taco Bell and gas on the way home. So a total of 3 hours commute, an hour and a half there and an hour and a half back, every Thursday night in the middle of the night in full drag, just because I love what I do. Years later, after the pandemic, when things started to open up, I really started to try to brand myself and get back into the community. I was doing a ton of shows, again, just for free, just making those queer spaces available for others and myself. And now, for the most part, this is my full-time job. So the other point that I want to make about drag is that drag is limitless. The power of drag is limitless. As soon as you harness that self-confidence and energy within yourself, you can achieve anything. My friend, my good friend, Beg Bick, who is also a DJ down in Boston, I looked at him one day and I said, I have played instruments as a kid, I love music, can you teach me how to DJ? And now I'm DJing some of the biggest nights in Boston as well. If you put your mind to something, you can achieve it. There is no limit to that. And drag was the reason I was able to figure that out a lot sooner in life than most others. So, again, circling back, drag to me is so much more about the power and investment in yourself that you are able to then share with others. Another question that was posed to me by Spencer when he was helping me kind of prep this speech was, why do I do drag? What is it about drag that really attracts me to it? As a young, very effeminate kid, I was always enthralled by the women in my life. I know I'm kind of covered up right now, but my entire right arm is covered in tattoos that represent the strong women in my life. I have one for my mom, my sister, my grandmother, my actual mother, Lady Gaga. Biological, of course. And you can tell in the makeup, obviously. But the strong women in our lives are so much more a part of the queer community than sometimes is seen through media. So the women in the room, thank you for being the empowering forces behind what I do. I am eternally, eternally grateful for you. And then the other question that I was posed was, what needs to be done to make it better for people to actually involve themselves with drag? The thing that I will always fall back on, truly, is education. The more that allies welcome themselves into queer spaces and expose themselves to different identities, we can come together as communities and respect differences, but learn to appreciate them as well. Appreciation and respect do not necessarily always go hand in hand, so it's so important to acknowledge that just respecting someone else's privacy or their art or their identity is one thing, but to actually live in it with them and appreciate them for who they are is so much more powerful. So I implore all of you to meet someone new today. Look to your left and to your right. Are you familiar with the person that you are sitting next to? If you are not, give them a wave, give them a handshake if you're comfortable, maybe even a hug. I'm a hugger. But make others feel safe in those spaces. That is what I have learned through drag, and that is what I truly hope that all of you take away from this wonderful afternoon, is that we are a community and we stand together in everything that we do, whether it's political or not. Just getting into drag is a political act, but it starts with that appreciation of others and appreciation of the community and space around you. So thank you so much, Malden Pride, for having me. This is fabulous. I hope all of you have a wonderful afternoon. I can't wait to spin some music for you. I hope we have some house heads in the building. I love my house music. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Harlow. Okay, next up we have, let's see, Emmalyn Woods. Emmalyn Woods is a recent Malden High School graduate dedicated to empathy, optimism, inclusion, and community. She is best known by their peers and mentors for her pink hair. For their pink hair. For their pink hair, unapologetic self-expression, and vibrant personality. Emmalyn will continue her education at Salem State University in the fall, where they plan to study the arts and to pursue a career in animation. Emmalyn Woods.
We hearing me okay? Yeah. All right. I'd like to thank the Malden Pride Coalition for having me again, more specifically Aisha and Leilani for getting me this phone so I can read this speech. Let's get this show on the road. Like, seriously, it's been amazing to see how much Malden Pride has done this year. I think the events that they've hosted this Pride Month have been like some of the best in the city like ever. I was born and raised in Malden. I was born in Melrose, raised in Malden. But I grew up queer in Malden. My coming out experience was made so much easier by the fact that I live in a state where my rights are protected by the law, or rather, the fact that there aren't any laws trying to suppress my queerness. I was allowed to grow and change and define my identity as something that's truly mine. I was given the individuality that every child deserves and needs in order to navigate life. I believe that at its core, pride isn't just about queerness and personal identity. It's also about the sense of community and solidarity that comes with standing up for what we believe in, even in the face of adversity and discrimination. And the Malden community is a perfect example of this. Through collaboration, volunteer work, and fundraising, we demonstrate our love and support for each other, proving that we're committed to creating a city that values diversity and inclusivity for all, and it's because of that hard work that we've been able to gather here today, so thank you again to the Malden Pride Coalition. I was lucky enough to be raised in a community that values our diversity, teaches empathy, respect, and equality. I've been blessed to meet queer teachers and peers that have welcomed me into respectful and welcoming places, and I've met so many people that I'm lucky to call friends. This year has been especially challenging for our community, marked by hateful rhetoric and actions that threaten to undermine our progress. However, Malden has shown resilience and strength in the face of adversity, and we've continued to uplift people, and I appreciate that so much. While the city continues to stand tall with its values of inclusivity and celebration of diverse identities, I feel that there's much more that we can do to recognize diversity in Malden. I think that we should celebrate all cultures and holidays unabashedly without placing one above the other, by shifting away from a more Eurocentric view and embracing the unique heritage and traditions of different communities. I think the city can become a more welcoming and inclusive place for everyone. Additionally, we must continue to show our support for the local drag community, and though we've had so many drag events this year in support of Malden Pride, too much support towards local queens is never enough. Malden should continue to support and lift up its local queens as they continue to challenge societal norms and redefine the concept of gender identity and expression. In essence, I believe that Malden must continue to be an inclusive and welcoming community, not just during Pride Month, but every single day of the year. Malden Pride is one of my favorite annual events we have in this city, but we need to remember that Pride isn't just a party, it's a call to action. Ultimately, the success of queer representation in Malden will depend on the continued efforts of community organization, elected officials, and individual residents to advocate for a more diverse and inclusive environment for all. I hope you enjoy this day of queer joy and reflection, and most importantly, I wish you all a very safe and happy rest of your Pride Month.
Next, I would like to welcome Maya Colón Hayes up to the front. Let's see, Maya is a 24-year-old artist and activist with a heart for LGBTQ and disability and children's rights. Maya is passionate about advocating for those who are like them and has worked with kids in some capacity, whether as a teacher, a nanny, a coach, or a mentor since 2015. Maya also can read your birth chart or cards and is an Aquarius sun, Capricorn rising, Pisces moon. Watch out for this one.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I think you can hear me too well. Okay. Hi. So I'm Maya, like Spencer said. So I've spoken at a lot of events in my life, and I've stood in front of literally thousands of people at some of them and talked at length about many different things. And somehow this one feels more vulnerable and more real. It feels less Karen's daughter and more just Maya. So while it does feel like a little bit more pressure, it feels incredibly welcoming and open and calm, and I want to thank everybody for that. And I also want to thank Malden Pride for inviting me to speak and for inviting all of these wonderful people to speak and to have these tables and vendors and these educators here to help the queer community in so many different ways. Hearing people's stories of how they came to realize they were queer always stuck with me, so I'm hoping that if this sticks with even like one person a little bit, that's enough for me. So I have probably one of the most supportive family systems that you could ask for, other than them actually being gay themselves. They've always been incredibly open and supportive of LGBT rights, and they've always been vocal on it never being an issue if any of us did come out. And they very clearly have no issue with it now. I had every support system in place that a young bi girl could ask for, and yet when I realized that I liked a girl for the first time, I cried. I cried in the attic for 3 days. I cried because even knowing that you are supported and that you will be accepted by your family and friends, the world is still hostile. It's scary, and there's often a target on people's backs. And I already had enough of them as the girl who gets sick a lot in the special classes whose mom works for the city. There was already a lot going on. And I cried because I knew that some people wouldn't understand and that some family wouldn't understand. And I cried because I barely understood. I was very confused. And I knew that whatever was happening would change the way the world looks at me. Anyway, that shook me up so much that I shoved it into the back of my head, completely forgot about it, until my junior year of high school, where I had the quintessential canon queer girl experience of a much too close female friendship that ended absolutely catastrophically. And that reminded me of that moment in 6th grade. All of a sudden, everything flew together and it was like a puzzle connecting in my head. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining this feeling and this loss. I liked her. As I came to terms with this and told various people and family members, it got pretty real, and with that always comes the good with the bad. I cut my hair senior year of high school to donate it to Locks of Love, and I cut it pretty short, and the immediate whispers around the hall was that she's a lesbian, she's gay, she wants to be a boy, she's just doing this for attention, which is ridiculous, all of that. But also, why was being gay or a lesbian such a bad thing that had to be whispered about in hallways across the whole day? It's ridiculous. Also, side note, how do bullies always know that we are gay before we do? Baffling. Ridiculous. After high school ended, I lived in New York City for about a year with every type of person that you could think of. I had never really had a group, like a vibe of easy connection with people, until then. The program that I was in had an LGBT meetup, and so I went because I was in a new city and no one had any preconceived notions of who I am or who I was. And being in that room and talking freely about gender, sexuality, relationships, neurodiversity, art, and how all of these coincide and intersect to create my personal queerness is something I will never forget. Coming home and making more gay friends and going to events and parties and meetups, I realized how truly open it is and legitimately accepting everybody is. You don't need to explain, and you don't need to open yourself up to the scrutiny and questioning by trying to carefully bring up a topic, because everybody else is already well versed in it too. I can say that sometimes I feel like a girl in the way that a tomato is a fruit, and they'll get it. People will understand. The ability to be yourself and no explanation, and being surrounded by actual, to the core, deep understanding is something I'll never get tired of. Figuring out I was queer was like putting on glasses for the first time. The community taught me I'm not wired wrong. My wires are just a rainbow. I'm not gonna stop acting gay the same way you don't ask people to take off their glasses and act like they need them. They might be able to see without them a little bit, but not as well, and they're likely confused because they can't read things. They can't read the signs. You don't tell people to take their glasses off because you might catch their bad eyesight, and you don't tell people to take their glasses off because you don't like being reminded there are people who need them. I will not hide my queerness because it's not something to be ashamed of. I'm proud of every aspect of who I am, my queerness, my disability, my creativity, and my ability to speak freely about all of these things. I hope that I can show others it's okay to showcase who they are, and proudly. We're in a time again where it's scary to be this open and this vulnerable. But what keeps me going is thinking of the kids who see it. They need to see themselves in us and see their futures and what they have to look forward to. It's our job to protect them and show them what they can be and who they can become. Because the kids are going to change the world, and Gen Z is a box full of matches, and we just need to light the fire for them. They're good to go.
Next, I would like to welcome up Dr. Alex Coleman. Dr. Alex Coleman has lived openly as a non-binary and transgender person for 30 years. In addition to being a parent and grandparent, Alex is a child and family clinical psychologist, attorney, educator, organizer, musician, and social justice advocate committed to improving the lives of all gender identities and sexual orientations and other marginalized groups. Please welcome Alex Coleman.
Hi. Welcome Pride, everybody. Are you having fun? Having a good time? Should we thank the Pride organizers? I got recruited as the elder trans person because they had to go to Brookline to find somebody who would fit. Actually, I've been out in the LGBTQIA communities for probably about 40 years. I started taking gender realigning hormones almost 30 years ago. And there weren't a lot of people to provide the service or doing it, except on the street. So we've come a very long way. And I'm really glad to be with you as we're celebrating today our humanity, our existence, and our survival, that we have and that we will. Together, we will, and we'll survive well. Here, we celebrate our collective and our individual journeys, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. Unfortunately, as you've heard from other people, and as you too well know, this year we celebrate in the context of increasing misinformation, lies, distortions, and cruelty, fueling over 500 items of anti-LGBTQIA+ legislation in the past year. Don't you think we could find a better use for legislation? What do you think? Okay. Many are specifically directed at transgender people and drag and many are specifically directed at minors and their supportive families. Limits on our ability to access gender-affirming care, our freedom of self-expression, drag performances, book bans, don't say gay bans in education, criminalizing the provision of medically and often life-saving care, legislation, so-called religious exemptions to allow providers to withhold services to us, even time-sensitive medical care. And at this point, I want to say something about hormone blockers and transgender treatment for youth and young adults. Because hormone blockers were only available recently, and I've professionally dealt with clients who have been able to access and increasingly taking risks with other care providers to put ourselves on the line to authorize the use of hormone blockers. Before there was a program in the Massachusetts area, before there was a program at Children's or at Brigham's, and I'm so thrilled that we have these programs now, but hormone blockers save lives. They save lives every day. They may not be enough to save lives. It buys people time to decide what's right for them, how it feels. It gives them a chance to socialize and grow up and have some experiences so that you don't have to play catch up when you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, or your 60s, or older, or in your 70s, like I am, as I am. Anyway, they are critical. And care provision is also critical. Mental health care. It's hard. Even if you heard from the previous speakers, even when you have a very supportive environment, a supportive town, a supportive family, supportive teachers, even under those circumstances, we deal with the assaults that happen every single day, multiple times a day. Every time somebody uses a pronoun that doesn't feel right. Every time somebody says you can't do whatever is right for you, that you can't go to a bathroom. They would want me to go into the women's room so that so women would feel comfortable with my being there. Think about it. It's so stupid. And it's actually criminal. In my opinion, the people who are trying to criminalize folks who are either providing care, or parents who are looking out for their children, or people who are adolescents or young adults who are seeking care, that behavior, or performing drag, or being themselves and perceived as being in drag in public, the people who should be considered the criminals are the ones who are legislating that that's unlawful. They are the criminals, not us. So in this context where our human rights, I got the shirt just for pride, our health and our safety don't seem to matter to so many, it's easy to understand why we feel these are very difficult, dangerous, and frightening times for us, because they are. But they also are times where things have also gotten a lot better, and that's partly why we're seeing the pushback that we're seeing. It's frightening to people. We also have some allies. I mean, whether you agree with Joe Biden about everything or not, Joe Biden is the first president I've ever heard who stood up for us. Obama did a little bit in the second term, but never around trans stuff, so visibly and openly. Never for trans youth, never for trans parents of trans children, or maybe even for trans parents, such as myself. Maura Healey is an out lesbian. Who would have thought? It's great, and there's so many more who are out there. More importantly, we're self-advocating. We are, all of us, allies and those of us in the community, living our true lives to the best of our abilities. And that's not true necessarily 100% of the time. I don't think it's true of any human being who can live their true life 100% of the time. And that's all the ways that define us. It's You know, it's not only our gender identity or our sense of what is our appropriate sex or our appropriate form of expression. It has to do with our ability levels, what we're good at, what we're not good at, what things are hard for us to do, what things are not. It comes from our ethnic backgrounds. It comes from our other isms, whatever they may be. And that's what makes us unique individuals and so special. And we need to live our true selves. When we're in an environment that doesn't honor our true selves, we can't do it all the time. And it's very hard. It's very hard. You know that, I know that. But as we do it, we're also changing other people's hearts and minds. Because it's hard for somebody to know you and to care about you, even a little bit, and to then impose the same kind of harassment on you. They still do it sometimes, but it makes it a little bit harder. I know the hard work of being other my entire life. I've struggled internally and in relationships to be true to myself and to live openly. And you know, it isn't easy. From early childhood, this is a little bit of my story. It's a very long story, so I'm going to spare you the length of it. But I was aware, and I say a very young child, I'm talking about preschool, that my body was female, but it felt wrong. At different points in my life, I could describe it differently because I had different facility with language, and there was more language now available to describe it than there was at the time. But I also got the clear message that it wasn't to be discussed. From books, from television, life experiences, I also learned that girls were excluded from activities, jobs, dress, play, participation in ways that boys weren't. Of course, the same was true for boys, although the boy activities were typically more highly valued. I was a feminist from elementary school, if not earlier. They didn't have the word feminist then. Particularly before gender realignment, mine, dress expectations were a huge problem for me. And in law school, I was able to wear jeans or whatever to classes. But for moot court, we were supposed to dress up. And the hardest thing, the hardest thing for me wasn't making an argument before, the judge who was a lawyer. It wasn't making the argument that women should be allowed to be a bartender in a bar in, quote, Martini, Maine, when all the law was against that. It was having to wear a skirt. To me, that was the biggest trauma, and I had nobody to say that to. I made the legal argument okay. The rest of it, I don't know how I did. In about 4th or 5th grade, this is during the 1950s. If you've watched 50s television, you get a little of an idea of what's going on if you didn't live through it yourself. I grew up in New York on Long Island, and I wore snow pants under my skirts. We were supposed to go to school in skirts at the time if you were coded as a girl. And we didn't have leggings, we didn't have stuff like that, so we wore snow pants, which was fine with me. And so I was a smart little kid. I get to school, and what do I take off? Do I take off the snow pants? Do I take off the snow pants? No, I take off the skirt. And that earned me a trip to the local child psychologist. And I was fortunate because the psychologist who I saw was progressive. They weren't necessarily, they probably perceived me as being a lesbian, and I came through the lesbian community, so they got it partly right. And they told my parents to let me be, and I'd find my way. Well, I'm not sure that my parents believed it or followed it as much as I would have liked, but I was fortunate because unlike too many others, and until very recently it was legal in Massachusetts, I wasn't subjected to conversion therapy, also known as torture. As an adult living as a lesbian, but not really identifying as a woman, I chose to become pregnant as a single lesbian, non-binary, and transgender person, even though those words weren't there right then, knowing that there was a certain obvious order. Like, it made more sense to become pregnant before I took hormone realignment treatment. Although, now we know that it doesn't necessarily have to happen in that order, but it probably makes more sense. I was outside the box even in that part, and there were very few of us, but this area was one of the first places where there was a number of lesbian women becoming pregnant by choice. Anyway, I have to find my place here 1 second. So, throughout my son's life, who was raised by me, I've always prioritized his needs. I've actively engaged with, included him in decisions around my gender identity's impact on him from birth. And as recently as yesterday, we discussed how to reference him in today's remarks, which is why I'm using the gendered pronouns. In raising Ben, I began as mom, explaining to Ben that I did all the things that moms or dads do for their children. So sometimes we say, yeah, I'm like your mom, dad, and you're the child. You do the things that boys can do or girls could do. Why should you be limited to half the colors, to half the clothing, to half the friends, to half the activities? You should be who you are, and that's good. And there's nothing missing. There's nothing missing for you, there's nothing missing for me. And we talked about, the poor kid would come home from preschool and say, guess what? I learned boys grow up to be men and girls grow up to be women. And I'd say, well, yeah, most of the time, that's true. But sometimes, and we would talk about how it can be. And at different points, there would be other questions. Well, how do people do that? Or whatever. And so when I began to transition, we agreed, and then Ben was age 5 at this point. And when Ben was in kindergarten, I was the single lesbian parent. There were no other lesbian parents at the time, or gay, openly gay male parents, whether they were coupled or single. So they could ignore that I was a lesbian if they chose to, although I tried to make it as difficult as possible. So I had gone in and I explained to the principal before my child entered kindergarten, I said, look, I'm a lesbian and I would like you to make a good match with a teacher, and I'm not closeted, and so we need to work together about this. The next year I went in, I said, well, you remember how we had this talk last year? And I could see the principal sort of quivering a little bit. And I said, well, I'm going to start taking hormones this summer, and I want to give you the heads up. I will be talking to people in the town and some of the kids' parents and stuff, but I want you to know so you could make a good match with a teacher and we could be prepared. Well, I did what I could do, and it didn't work out so great. When I was first out and it became public in the school, one of the parents came up to me from my kids' class and said to me that I was imposing my political agenda on the first grade children. Now, I thought agenda was an appropriate word because it's a gender, but that was the most I could come out of it, and it was horrible. It was really, really horrible. This was 1993 in Brookline. Now, I expected pushback, but I never expected what happened. There were threats to remove my child from my care, and I had represented kids in child abuse cases, so it's kind of ironic. Teasing, ostracism. The 5 to 6-year-old kids didn't have a problem. They mostly wanted to know what to call me. Ben's mom, Ben's dad. Ben was calling me Alex at this point. That would work too. But many of the parents and outsiders, including some people who were opposing sex education in a neighboring school district, were using my gender affirmation process as a call to arms to attack. And I was under siege, and I felt it. I was open, I was public, I was non-apologetic, I was not ashamed. I was hurt, I was fearful, I was determined, and I was angry. I was publicly open for myself. I was publicly open to show Ben that there was nothing to be ashamed of. That there was nothing wrong with what I was doing, and there was nothing wrong with our family. And I understood that people would need to adjust, and I did my best to enable them to do so. But sadly, support was minimal at the time, including from the gay and lesbian community. It was frightening for people in that community, especially people who maybe had some questions about their own gender presentation or their identity. It may have been a little bit too close to home for them. They also, as lesbians and gay people, I know how vulnerable we felt at the time. You know, there was the AIDS crisis, there was a lot of homophobia. It's changed a lot. As much as I talked about how bad it is so much better. You wouldn't hear speakers coming up from high school. You wouldn't see people speaking out the way we are now. It's really improved so much. And now, despite the onslaught against LGBTQIA people, as I described before, there's no reason to feel shame, inadequate, less than because you are LGBTQIA. It flows off, plus, or an ally. This is a time to come together for support, for activism, for organization, for education. This is a time to mobilize. And it's also a time to ask for help, because it's hard being us, and it's hard being our allies. And we are here to help each other. And there is help out there. And I know how vulnerable we all are to depression, to violence, to suicidality. And I just want to say, I'm here. We're here. Use us. We don't need to be isolated. We needn't despair alone. We have community. Look around you. Really, look around you. Look at all of us. And there are even more people in the other room, I'm sure. Look up here. Think of the allies that you have in your lives. We are beautiful people. You are beautiful people. I'm not using, right. We are. The rainbow of colors in all its permutation, that's us, and we deserve to be our true selves. Together, we're unstoppable.
Next, I would like to welcome Erga up to the stage. Erga is a licensed clinical social worker and school adjustment counselor. She is passionate about racial equity and justice. She earned a BSW from Salem State University, where she became the first Black female student trustee. She holds an MSW from Simmons University. Erga is a community organizer dedicated to disrupting racism and bringing people together. Erga is a chair of the Mystic Valley Area Branch of the NAACP Environmental Justice Committee, board member of MYWRA, member of Malden River Works Steering Committee, member of Malden Reads, and president of One Race, Inc. This group organizes and facilitates the Farnell Longest Race, Culture and Ethnicity High School Workshop annually for students and educators. She believes that it takes one person to make a difference, and it takes a group of people to bring forth change. Welcome, Erga.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm really excited to be sharing this space with all of you. Thank you, Malden Pride, for all that you do. Round of applause to y'all. I ask that you please join me in a moment of silence for all the human lives taken by dehumanizing violence and by suicide. Please bow your heads. Thank you. I'd like to share an example of how vital it is for us to collectively use our roles, our positions, and our platforms to support our LGBTQ+ folk, because it is necessary. I would like to share parts of a transcript from the NAACP's Image Award, which took place earlier this year. Some of you may have missed it. I chose to share this because Gabrielle Union and her husband Dwayne Wade used their voices and their platform to amplify the need for us, the NAACP, and communities at large to prioritize our efforts to make people in the LGBTQIA+ communities feel safe, feel secured, and seen. I highly recommend that at some point you all check out their acceptance speech. It's 5 minutes long, it's on YouTube. It was extremely moving, especially when Dwayne Wade spoke directly to his daughter, Zaya. He acknowledged her strength and resilience in her fight to be who she was born to be. In our daily roles, be it in the home, the classrooms, from courts to the boardrooms, and all of the places in between, we all have a responsibility to use our platforms to call out and call in for change when injustice is in our midst. We should not remain silent. Human lives are literally depending on our voices and our collective power to bring forth change. Here are some of the powerful words that Gabriel said. I quote, "First, in the intersection of Black rights and the rights of the LGBTQIA, trans, and gender nonconforming people continues to be rough. And that's an understatement. We fail to protect some of our most vulnerable among us. Black trans people are being targeted, terrorized, and hunted everywhere, every day. And there's rarely a whisper about it." Those words sparked action on a national, regional, and on a, excuse me. I lost my place, oh, technology. Those words sparked action on a national, regional, and local level. Today, we have a LGBTQIA+ committee at the regional level that is focused on research, providing resources and support. This committee also provides education, training opportunities, and so much more. We all need to understand that everyone needs to be seen and heard. Everyone should feel safe and protected. Dalai Lama, yes, let's snap, yes. Dalai Lama said it best: love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity can't survive. Happy Pride Month, thank you.
Let's see, it looks like our next speaker is, State Representative Steve Ultrino. State Representative Steve Ultrino is a lifelong resident of Malden and has represented the Malden community in the Massachusetts legislature since he was elected in 2014. In addition to his work as a state representative, he is also a longtime educator and currently teaches at both Salem State University and Suffolk University. Steve has been an active Maldonian for over 30 years, fighting for higher quality education, and on the school committee, improving the life of residents as a Ward 2 city councilor, and serving those in need as the president of the St. Rocco Society and chairman of the Malden YMCA. Please welcome Steve Ultrino.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your patience. And I want to first start off with thanking the Malden Pride Committee for organizing today. Let's give them another round of applause. As someone who's organized events for many years, I know the logistics and how much work goes into things like that. And we want to thank everyone who's participating today, speakers and artists, musicians, and organizations. In the past year, I don't need to tell you, but there have been numerous attacks directed at the LGBTQIA+ community across the country. Sad, but it's present. Even here in Massachusetts, half of our LGBTQIA+ youth do not have access to mental health services after facing harassment, threats, violence, etc. at school, in the community, at the playground, wherever. Particularly, our transgender communities have been attacked politically and legislated out of existence in many states. But this community, the members of our legislators, most members of our legislature, have stood proud, and we stand against bigotry and discrimination. And that's because of you, people like you who advocate and lobby. But last year at this event, which was in a park, I promised to continue to fight for the rights and equal opportunities for members of our community. I'm proud to say that Massachusetts is a national example in strengthening protections for the LGBTQIA+ community. Last July, we became one of the first states to codify access to gender-affirming care as a human right after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Dozens of bills have been filed, dozens of amendments have been passed to better protect our LGBTQIA+ community this session. And we are actively addressing the lack of inclusivity and discriminatory policies that still exist against the LGBTQIA+ community, both small and large. We are working, most importantly, to make our healthcare system more trans-inclusive. My colleague, Rep. Dome, out of the western part of Massachusetts, has filed a bill, and it's moving, to reform state building codes and regulations to allow for multi-stall gender-neutral bathrooms. May not seem important to many, but as you know, it is. Now, for those of you that have known me, I will remain committed to ensuring equal access to healthcare, jobs, education, and opportunities for all, regardless of your gender identity, sexual orientation. When you call my office, when you reach out to me and my staff, we don't care who you are, who you love, what race, who you pray to, if you're even as good looking as me or my staff. My mother made me put that in, I'm sorry. We will help. We will help no matter who you are. And you should know that you have an ally as a member of the House of Representatives. I am very proud to represent not just Malden, but people across the Commonwealth. I speak to members in other legislatures across the country. 2 weeks ago, I had an education forum with colleagues from Tennessee, Ohio, and Alabama, progressive Democrats like myself, who just look at us and say, we need to move to Massachusetts. No, you need to grow the agenda in your state, because there are elected officials in those states that start with the school boards. It may start on banning one book, but look at where that has gone. So we can't just go to events like this and be together as one when we don't really advocate across this country. It may just be a blurb in the news clip that another book is banned, that another bill in Florida has passed, that a principal was fired for allowing a teacher to teach about trans rights, or even a biology lesson, or a sex ed course, or senators, powerful US senators and House of Representatives, making, instead of feeding people where they have no agenda, let's just discriminate people. But if we continue to speak up, our voices will be heard. And that is what today is, to join together as one. But when we leave here today, go out, call, send a postcard, talk to people in your community and other states. This needs to end. We are all one, we are all loved, and we must be together. Thank you.
Okay, next on our list for speakers, we have State Senator Jason Lewis. State Senator Jason Lewis proudly represents the people of the 5th Middlesex District of Massachusetts, which includes the cities and towns of Malden, Melrose, Reading, Stoneham, Wakefield, and parts of Winchester. First elected to the state senate in 2014, he has delivered results for his district and has been a progressive leader for the Commonwealth. Senator Lewis has long championed educational equity and led the effort to pass the Student Opportunity Act in 2019. I would like to welcome State Senator Jason Lewis.
Thank you, Chester. Happy Pride, everyone. I'm State Senator Jason Lewis. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm absolutely delighted to be celebrating Pride Month with you all today, celebrating the strength, the diversity, and the joy of the LGBTQ+ community. Also feeling really honored to be included on this list of incredible, wonderful speakers that we've had the privilege of hearing from today. So thank you, and let's give another round of applause for all of the courageous speakers today. One of the issues that really motivated me to first run for the state legislature over a decade ago was the fight for marriage equality. I was born in South Africa, and I grew up there in the 1970s when that country, as you probably know, was under the racist apartheid system. And I saw firsthand the impact of that system's cruelty and oppression on people of color. I pledge to you that as long as I have the privilege of serving as your state senator, I will continue to do everything I can to advance and to champion racial, gender, and LGBTQ+ equity and justice. As has been noted today, we have come a long way, and we do have a lot to celebrate. And since I'm a state legislator in Massachusetts, I'm going to use the example of our Commonwealth. We were actually the second state back in 1989 to prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation. I wish we were the first, but second, still pretty good. In 2004, we became the first state to recognize same-sex marriage. In 2011, and then again in 2016, we passed laws to add gender identity to our anti-discrimination statutes, including in public accommodations. We also passed a law somewhere along the way to prohibit conversion therapy in Massachusetts. In 2018, there was an effort by opponents to repeal the law we had passed to protect transgender rights. And people of Massachusetts voted overwhelmingly 2-1 to defeat that effort and preserve our protections for our transgender community. Then last year, yes, I think that deserves applause. And then last year, as noted by Representative Ultrino, our state legislature came together on a bipartisan basis and passed very important legislation to protect access to reproductive health care and to gender-affirming care, no matter what the Supreme Court does or any other state. And of course, we also elected Maura Healey, one of the first openly lesbian governors in our nation's history. Of course, beyond our borders, we've seen efforts from right-wing politicians and their allies to attack and bully the LGBTQ+ community, especially our most vulnerable transgender youth. One of the worst offenders is the repugnant Florida governor, who has been celebrating the passage of new laws in his state to ban gender-affirming care for minors, to ban children from attending drag shows, and limit what teachers can teach in school. And now he's launched a campaign for the White House to bring these hateful policies to every state in our nation. Are we going to let this happen? No, we are not. We're going to stand up, we're going to speak out just as we are today, and we're going to make sure that somebody like that and others like him do not continue to are not able to continue to enact these kinds of hateful policies. At the same time, there's also more we need to do right here in Malden, in our communities, and in our state. Just last week, Governor Healey and the State Department of Education finally rolled out an updated health curriculum framework, which includes updating sex ed in our schools to be inclusive of gender identity and sexual orientation. That's a great step. But next, we need to pass the Healthy Youth Act, which would make sure that that is what's taught in all of our schools in our sex ed curriculum. As was noted by Representative Ultrino, we also need to do more to provide mental health services and other supports, especially for our transgender youth, teens, and young adults. And of course, we must condemn any efforts to ban books or to censor books with LGBTQ+ characters. We will continue to fight together for a more just and inclusive society where every person feels safe, where every person is loved and can love, where every person is appreciated, and every person is treated with respect and dignity. Happy Pride, everyone.
Next, I would like to welcome, last but certainly not least, Muhammad Burhan. Burhan is a highly acclaimed multimedia artist, tech enthusiast, and community organizer, renowned for their exceptional work in promoting sustainability, celebrating South Asian culture, advocating for LGBTQ+ rights, and skillfully exploring the intricate connections between these crucial themes. Their expertise as a captivating speaker has made them a sought-after figure, delivering impactful presentations at prestigious institutions worldwide, including MathWorks, Harvard, and Pink News. Collaborating with more than 40 nonprofit organizations and brands, Burhan remains committed to empowering representation of South Asian queer communities. Their creative campaigns have made a significant impact, captivating an extensive audience of 39 million viewers on TikTok, resulting in profound inspiration as one of the top 50 South Asian changemakers. Burhan is currently co-authoring a book in partnership with Cambridge University Press alongside their grassroots activism. Burhan has excelled professionally as a product manager at Alarm.com, where they co-founded the sustainability team, demonstrating their unwavering commitment to environmental awareness and innovation. Currently working at Mass Challenge, Burhan plays a pivotal role in fostering global startup acceleration, providing them a front row seat to witness groundbreaking innovations. Originally from Rawalpindi, Pakistan, Burhan's journey as a young scholar in the US serves as a driving force behind their passion and impactful activism and artistic expression. Please welcome Burhan.
Pride Mubarak, everyone. I am Burhan from Pakistan, and today I come here in many pieces. A few pieces of me live here today in Boston, a few lost in Pakistan, and few lost in the little town I grew up in called Dheri Hassanabad, Rawalpindi, Pakistan. A few in my middle school where my bullies broke my arm. A few in that center where I tried to found myself but ended up in conversion therapy. And a few in that high school where I got to see the .01, the elitist and their privileges of Pakistan. This was not the speech I planned or wrote, but a conversation with a friend last night completely changed what I wanted to talk. Me and my partner were giving a lift to one of my Iranian friends. She was very excited because she's visiting her family after 4 years, not in Iran, but in Turkey, because she cannot go back to Iran. She's a queer person, but she's living like myself her life on installments every year where she has to renew her installments or visa. And she asked me this question last night while being emotional. How can she be herself in front of her family because she loves and she doesn't want to lose them? And also she missed them because she hasn't been home in 4 years. She came, like myself, to the US for education. This journey to self-acceptance has definitely not been an easy one, not a straight path. Nothing in my life has been straight, including this button I broke while walking here. That it is so tangled up that every time I try to untangle, it gets more messier. And that is intersectionalism. When I pay attention to the transphobia I'm fighting for, the Islamophobia gets triggered. Oh, you cannot be a queer Muslim. Your first name cannot be a Muhammad. Change your name. And if I try to pay attention to the Islamophobia, the xenophobia gets triggered. The broken immigration system, get out of this country. You do not deserve to live in the United States. Thousands and thousands of comments I have read online and also been told on my face. And when I try to work on all of these things together, the Islamophobia, the xenophobia, the queerphobia, the racism comes. And then the neurodivergence come. And sometimes it gets so tricky to find acceptance and platform to speak on the issues I deeply care about, issues that impact my community every day, issues due to which millions and millions of queer lives are in danger worldwide. I have a very love and hate relationship with coming out. I love that I am living my life as an authentic person. I'm living a life of honesty, and I'm making history. But I'm sad that of the family and friends I lost on the way, and I hate that. Never make fun of people if they are not out. If you have never feared death while coming out, you have a privilege. If you have never lost anyone while coming out, you have a privilege. If your parents love you and you have a supportive community of people, you have a privilege. The fact that you're standing in this room with me, you have a privilege because millions and millions of people cannot have an event like this in public. Certainly I cannot in Pakistan. Not everyone in the world can be proud or celebrate pride because pride is only accessible to a very few people in the world when we take into account the global population. And that is very, very unfortunate. Nobody deserves to live or hide themselves. None of my brown friends in Boston are out. And that is sad. I cannot post them online without risking their lives. Many of my friends from Pakistan cannot follow me because that will out them and that will bring them life-threatening consequences. And if you don't understand any of this, you have a privilege. And that is why I'm fighting for representation in all the field. I hate being alone in the room. I hate being the only person and carry the weight of representation. People in my community are hungry for that representation, but I cannot represent anyone. And that is why if you can walk out of this room with one message, that is the definition, that is the message of intersectionality. Be intersectional in your activism. Be intersectional in your advocacy. If your activism doesn't include everyone, then that is not going to bring liberation to any one of us. Today, we are faced with unprecedented challenges globally. In the US, with over 400 anti-trans and queer bills being passed. And these bills have implications worldwide. The same political strategies who have worked for the right-wing administration are brainwashing politicians worldwide. We saw in Pakistan, my home country, where the Transgender Protection Act was passed in 2018. That act is now being questioned, fueled by the upcoming 2023 elections. The basic right that act provided are now being challenged due to, we saw the same in Uganda with the Kill the Gay bill passed, and that is happening worldwide. Strategies that are implemented by the right-wing politicians are being copy-pasted in other countries, and trans and queer people are being used as scapegoats for these politicians to get more votes. And they come for us because we are the more vulnerable. We cannot hide themselves. I feel like I never was even out because I always walked in the way I walked. I always talked the way I talk. And that resulted in bullying from day one. I was called khusra, which is a derogatory term in Urdu, before I even knew I was queer. And again, we need to be stronger as a community together. We cannot let ego and different societal factors divide us, because when we are divided, they come for us. When we are seen as the most vulnerable, they come for us. We need to be stronger as a community, and we need stronger allyship. We need more. We need all of you in this fight. When I went to Pakistan in 2021 to do a project to highlight colonialism, the laws that were implemented during British colonization, laws that banned queer existence, laws that criminalized my existence and existence of millions of people like me. I waved pride flag in Sheesh Mahal, where queerness for centuries was normalized, but now queer people cannot enter. And when I did my project and it was viral, I was the subject of political backlash. People involved in my project were tweeted by my Prime Minister's team so they could get more votes, and again use me as an example of, and that is what's happening with the politics worldwide. Again, I'm going to end this speech with one thing. When they tweeted me, they didn't use the word LGBTQ, they didn't use the word gay, they called me clown. Politicians around the world still have so much stigma and negativity around the world, gay, trans, etc., because they use everything. That's why we see with the Don't Say Gay bill. That's what we saw in many other bills that are even passed in the US that are banning, talking, and educating people about different things and different identities. So today I want you all to do something for me. Please open your phone and chant trans. I'm not hearing anything. Say trans. Trans. Say gay. Gay. Say queer. Queer. And this is for until we get queer liberation everywhere, in every single part of the world. Our liberation is intertwined. If none of us is free, we cannot be liberated. Thank you.
To liberation for all of us. we are going to have our friend, organizer, and comrade Spencer close us out for the speaking program. We will then take about a 10-minute pause, and back in this space we will have a performance by our own Harlow Havoc, who kicked off our speakers program. We will also have a performance from Wah Lum Kung Fu and Tai Chi Academy. And one of the things that I want to uplift about that performance is many of the things discussed in this space today have included the importance of intersectionality and the ideas that we have the right to bring our full identities into all of our spaces. So I want to uplift that there are affirming opportunities in Malden for everything from Tai Chi practice to medical care to getting a fabulous new hairdo. I list that last because Spencer is the owner of Mystic Valley Salon. And while if any of you in the room know me in real life, you know I'm not exactly a rainbow capitalist kind of gal, it is important to name that Spencer and the work done at Mystic Valley Salon has helped sponsor many of the drag performances that we have seen throughout the month. And it is important to note that gender affirmation happens in ways large and small in our presentation and in our internal alignment. Spencer did not submit a bio before offering closing remarks, so I am uplifting them as an activist in our community, a volunteer and an organizer who sent us an email months ago to say, what do you need on the day of Pride in the Park? And ended up helping us put together a month of celebration, resistance, and joy. When Spencer is done, just know that there is a free health clinic outside in the parking lot from our friends at Cambridge Health Alliance. At the Boston Queer Therapy table, you can go to request information on surgery letters to get gender-affirming surgical care. There is free information. The Queer to Queer Education space has gender-affirming makeup, labor organizing, tips and tricks. Free food, food truck, upstairs, quiet space for folks who've spent a lot of time in a close room with a lot of noise, and there's an arts and crafts space to the back for kids space. With that, I'm going away again. Spencer.
Thank you again for everyone coming here today. I wanted to use this moment to highlight why some of these things are important to our community. I'm not only a community member, I'm also a suicide survivor, and I'm also a conservative household survivor. So coming from New Hampshire, I was from a very loving family. However, without exposure to this environment, growing up for me was tough, not knowing where my future laid. Sometimes suicide for me was the opt-out for everybody else because I didn't understand where my life fit into theirs. So today, the reason why people try to advocate for these things is because we need representation at every level and every stage of somebody's life. You don't understand how these things can help to influence people to become who they truly are. And when we remove those things from the environments that children grow up in, we remove the option for that child to become who they fully are and who they are supposed to be. So today, I hope that we can continue to advocate for those things to remain in schools and teach children all of the options that life presents to us. I also want to urge you and remind you that supporting the LGBTQ community should not be limited to just 1 month. It is an ongoing commitment that should extend beyond closed doors. Let us speak up against discrimination and support our friends openly and advocate for change in public. And together, we can create a more inclusive and accepting world. Thank you, and as we bring the speakers program to a close, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for those who made it possible. A big thank you to the City of Malden for sponsoring today's catering and dedicated tabling organizations, our supportive ward counselors, and our parent org fiscal sponsor, the NOPE, the Massachusetts Cultural Center, our amazing volunteers, and all of my fellow board members. Without each and every one of you, none of this would be possible. Thank you for your unwavering support, your contributions, your belief in our mission. Together, we can build a more inclusive and vibrant community in Malden. Thank you.
Anyone first timers? Yes! Okay, welcome. Once again, my name is Harlow Havoc. I use she, her pronouns, and I am your Miss Gay Boston 2022. So typically, drag performances are all about the art of lip syncing, so I'm going to give you a little bit of that. So please make some noise for me. My name is Harlow Havoc.
Friday night and the lights are low, looking out for a place to go, where they play the right music, getting in the swing. You come to look for a king or a queen. Anybody could be that guy. Night is young and the music's high. With a bit of rock music, everything is fine. You're in the mood for a dance. And when you get that chance, you are the dancing queen. Young and sweet, only 17. Dancing queen, feel the beat from the tambourine. Oh yeah, you can dance, you can jive, having the time of your life. See that girl, watch that scene, digging the dancing queen, digging the dancing queen.
and feel proud about who they are in that. So thank you all for indulging in that with me. This is also part of the show where we call it Drag Asthma Hours, where I try to catch my breath. So I was working hard. I don't know if y'all saw a lot of that. My knees are getting old. I'm gonna need a good knee surgeon. I'll tell you that. But, as I said in my speech earlier, if you were not present for it, continue to be yourselves, your authentic selves. I found so much love and pride in myself by doing what I do, and now whether I'm in full costume or out, I'm able to channel Harlow as Justin and Justin as Harlow. So thank you all. Find your inner peace and share it with the world.
I don't want to take it back.